All right, so welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining. This is such a big group, and we're very excited to have you all here from all over the U.S. So far, I haven't seen any international folks, but from all over the U.S. Let me just go over some logistics before I hand it over to Lara. My name is Allison, and I'm the community facilitator for ACES Connection in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Lara is our host. She's the community facilitator for Southern California. And what we'll do is I'm going to turn it over to Lara in a minute, and she's going to facilitate this conversation about education. But if you all have a question or a comment, you can click the chat button at the bottom and go ahead and drop your question or comment into the chat. And then throughout the discussion today, I'll be calling on people who leave chat comments to unmute yourself and share your comment so that we have a discussion format. If you want to leave a comment or a resource in the chat, but you don't want to share out loud on video, just go ahead and make a note of that when you leave your comment in the chat. So you can say, here's a resource, but I don't need to share it on video, or however you want to say it. So that's an option. Just go ahead and let me know. What else? Other than that, I think we can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Lara.
Oh, thank you so much, Allison. Oh my God, this is so great. This is like having a conversation with 83 of my friends. I'm so glad you guys are here. This has definitely been a subject that's been rolling around in my head for a long time. So like Allison said, I'm the Southern California community facilitator for ACES Connection, but I also curate the ACES in Education page for ACES Connection and do work on my own with schools, and it's how I know many of you, around trauma and ACES and holistic school approaches. And if any of you had a chance to read the blog that I published, I think on Tuesday this week, you'll know that these kinds of questions that we're going to be talking about today have been in my head and been part of my experience since I left high school. But now I think with the present moment, that has been definitely brought to the forefront of my mind. I've been talking with Emily and James and Jim about this this week and last week, and just trying to figure out if we can seize this moment to think about, I mean, when in our lives we've never experienced anything like this before, and we probably won't again, that we've had a hard stop to everything that we've done and are trying this crazy, I have 2 sophomore boys at home, like I'm trying this just like you all are. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I was a teacher, and we're home full time, and I work from home, and I'm still don't know what the heck I'm doing. So how do we try to figure out what the bright spots are, the nuggets that have been really promising, and try to figure out what we want to bring back to our buildings when we do get to go back together physically? What kind of learnings might we bring forward? So that's really just the conversation today. Is I want to hear from you guys, like what, I put a lot in the blog of what I've seen, that has been really promising for me in terms of, ending state testing and, all these kind of interesting things that I'm seeing. My teenagers are finally getting enough sleep. They like being really self-directed. So I'm like, okay, this is all really interesting. I see teachers self-selecting professional development, like this, that they really like how can we carry some of that forward? So that's really where I'm coming from today. Emily and James are here. I think Jim's coming soon. So Emily Daniels and I work a lot together. And I'll let her talk a little bit about where she's at with this. And same with James. We've known each other and been colleagues for a while. And they bring a lot to this conversation, and we all come from different backgrounds. Emily has been a school counselor and does training with me. James has been a principal. So we all have a different perspective in this. So I will turn it over to you, Emily, if you have anything you want to add to that prompt. Oh, you're still muted, dear. There you go.
I know. I feel like that video that you put up. So thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation, Lara. It's exciting to see so many folks very interested in this topic. And I sort of want to offer some of what I'm thinking about right now, hoping that other people are interested in participating and sharing their ideas. But one of the things that I keep thinking about that is so, I guess, exciting to me is for example, so New Hampshire, where I am, our governor just made the announcement less than a half hour ago that our schools will remain closed for the rest of the school year. And although that pains me, because I have two children who are in school, one in high school, one in middle school, and they miss it gravely, it is what it is. One of the things that I heard him saying was just, he was imploring our teachers and our educators in our districts to remain flexible through this time, and to even consider things like pass-fail grading from now until the end of the school year. But to even have our governor be in a position right now where he's essentially encouraging, like actively encouraging flexibility, is enormous. And so, I just finished a workshop that I was co-leading with Steve Bradley, who is a fellow with Dr. Bruce Perry, and he was training our workshop participants in the core principles of NMT. And one of the things that is really interesting and I think helpful when you look at some of that NMT stuff is that most of school, and many of you already know this, but most of the way in which our school is structured relies incredibly upon that higher cortical functioning and the capacities that are, up here in that part of the brain. And this pandemic that we're experiencing, never mind trauma before the pandemic, but the pandemic in and of itself has got many of us residing in our the lower parts of our brain, because we're in a threat response ongoing.
Yeah.
And so what I'm excited about is this idea that, like, instead of me as a trainer, as a consultant, trying to like bang, and all of us actually who do this work, trying to bang down that door of saying, like, we need to prioritize regulation and relationships before we can expect reason. Instead of us having to actually bang down that door right now, we've got it, people.
Yeah.
This is the time. This is the moment where we can actually be encouraging that and not have to argue, well, it's 4 or 5 kids in the classroom. No, this is for everybody now. This isn't just for the students. This is for us as well as educators. What we need to be able to do to reach our kids and to also just continue in the profession and try to be, creative, so that we could do some project, directed work or some changes in making curriculum more relevant. So I'm curious what other people have to say about that. And I'll say more about that, but that for me is what I'm most excited about, is the opportunity to reprioritize so that we flip what is necessary, what we know is necessary to optimize learning, which is we need to regulate, then we need to be able to relate, and then we can do the learning piece. And so I feel like now is the time to seize that. We know this, like, let's make that happen.
Awesome. James, what about you?
I mean, anytime I can jump on a call with you guys, I'm just excited and humbled to be part of the conversation. Like, I don't even think I'm worthy of this this seat, but I'm excited for the conversation. I think, I think the way this all organically came about, and just our conversations last week, where we just kind of threw around the idea of, we've been put in this situation, and I think what we have to look at is the opportunity that this brings to the forefront in education. We've talked so much about social emotional learning. We've talked so much about putting relationships first. We've talked so much about regulation. And I think this pandemic has brought about this necessity and this need to truly put those things at the forefront. Because as educators, and I mean, I don't mean this to be disrespectful towards anybody, but as educators, sometimes we kind of act out of fear. We stick to what we're comfortable with out of fear of doing something different. And that doesn't just mean go for teachers, that goes for leaders too, because sometimes as leaders, we lead out of fear of doing something different and taking a risk. And this has kind of forced us, without any planning, to take a risk, to do something different. And, one of the videos I put out almost a month ago now, when this really was starting to hit the fan, was what I really urge teachers to do before you spend any time creating a lesson plan, before you spend any time doing anything academic. It's about, what are you doing to connect with every student, and not just the students, but connect with every family to see where they are in terms of all this thing, of all of this. And I think the other thing that I urge people to do is, we're such in a rush to get back to normalcy. Well, we're not in normal times. That's the reality. Like, this is so far from normal. We have to embrace that, accept that. And I think what's exciting for all of us is, when we do get to that point where we're back in the physical building, back in the brick and mortar, like, how many of these learning points can we carry back over into the classroom? Because I see, you know, one of the big posts out there right now talks about, you know, for so long we stressed state assessments. And one of the fears was this whole accountability piece. And like, you know, state assessments is the only way that we're going to hold teachers accountable. And as you look around the country, there's no state assessments anywhere at this point, but I see teachers who are working harder than they ever have, collaborating more than they ever have, you know, working with colleagues in different ways and being more creative than they've ever thought imaginable. And I think that's exciting. And it's kind of like this pandemic has got us moving in the right direction. So what do we do to keep this momentum when we go back into a building and not just revert back to what we've always done? Because it's easy to revert back to what we've always done. I don't want to do that. You know, I want to move forward in the progress that we've made in the midst of a tragedy. So I'm excited to hear what others have to say about that. And I'm excited to have some more conversation, but I mean, there's like 90 people on here, 97 people. I'm pumped up. I'm excited for the conversation. And I see Dad is on now. Jim's on. So that's awesome. So I'm excited to bring him into the conversation too.
Oh, that's so great. Yes, I mean, these are all the things that we've been talking about. It's like, how do we meet this head on? How do we carry this forward? How do we, you know, do this together and create some kind of momentum and movement together? All right. So Jim is on. Jim.
He's wondering what the question is.
The question currently for the three of us is, what have you been thinking about in terms of this topic of how we reimagine school? What do we need to do to bring this forward? What do you it's kind of a combination of things, like, and what would you like the group, this large, wonderful group, to think about as we enter into this discussion?
Well, first, thank you for your patience with my technology disability of joining the meeting late. You know, my concern is that we don't fall back. I mean, those of us that are trauma informed and those buildings that are trauma informed, I think the natural response right now as we're in this situation is, how do I connect with my kids? How do I connect with the families? I have a little bit of a concern that, you know, and I understand we're limited, you know, it's packets or some assignments on the Chromebooks and what have you. My concern is that we don't fall back into that mode when we come back. I just heard, just here in the state of Washington, that there's a real fear that the online schools that we saw years ago are really looking to make a comeback over this. And,
Yeah.
And as you know, most our kids don't succeed in those programs. So as I look at moving forward, man, I think we've got to hold to our journey, our mission as trauma-informed educators with that understanding. And I guess I have more questions of, you know, how do we connect with kids? How do we help take the fear out of what they're feeling right now? You know, I'll just use my granddaughter. She, you know, she comes from a loving home. They do school every morning. She's worked through her packet. She made a beautiful card to her teacher, and she hasn't heard anything back. And that was 2 weeks ago. And she has a very good teacher.
Right.
So you know what social distancing is. I talked with her yesterday. I could tell she's really hurt that she hasn't heard back from her teacher. She wants that connection. So here's a healthy child seeking that connection. Now we have our struggling kids. Our struggling kids are in environments that aren't safe. Man, how do we help them with predictability that we are going to come back, that we are going to be a group again? I think that's the challenge. I think one of the most creative things I've seen is maybe those Google chat rooms where teachers are bringing the kids together and having open conversations. But that's my biggest concern, is that we don't fall back into that mindset of packets and put them on a computer.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like, from what I keep hearing in these strands, are one, like, so what are the positives that you've noticed from this experience? How how do we sustain this when we do return? How do we support teachers when they do go back to buildings? What kind of, I mean, and kids obviously, but too, like the adults, how do we prepare them and support them? Any others that I'm missing?
I think there has to be some support for families and how we
Yeah.
come back from this for families, because we put so much upon parents. I don't agree with what we have put on parents, but we have put so much upon parents that we've created this, I don't know what the system is, but like they're really struggling, and the parents that I've talked to, between when is my parenting time, when is my teaching time, and what's that look like as I go back and forth between
Hallelujah. Yeah.
for somebody who's a teacher, like that's hard. Like you said, Laura, that's hard for us too. So how do we get that back for families, back to their normalcy as they know it when we do get back into a building? I think that's huge. That's really, really important. And I want to, we talk about connection, I have a shameless plug just for a second, because there's a parent online right now who have a former student who's in my building. So I have to say hi to Stinson, because Stinson said hi to me. So I want to make sure I say hi to Stinson. And Stinson, I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. And I'm so glad that you said hi to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, have there been really innovative ways of connecting with kids that seem to be, you know, supporting, that we want to try to continue? Yeah, so I want to hear from the group.
So we have a lot of comments. I just want to say we actually filled our capacity. So I'm getting emails from people who aren't able to join because our capacity is 100. So this is the first conversation that we've had to reach capacity. So this is exciting. We will have to do another one.
We're going to do another one. Absolutely.
So let me, oh my gosh. We've never had it quite like this.
I have a suggestion about how we may want to think about proceeding, and it's just a suggestion, but you know, one of the things that I think is, again, really great about this moment in time is that it's an opportunity for us to take some of what we understand about how trauma impacts, you know, how we process information, and apply that directly right now. So I do really, you know, for those who know my work, people know that I'm big into polyvagal and the work of Dr. Porges. But I will say that, you know, I think Dr. Bruce Perry's sequence of engagement model is really relevant right now, which is that, if you guys can picture it, it's that, you know, he has it in the triangle, and on the bottom is regulate, and in the middle is relate, and at the top is reason. And that he argues that that's the sequence of engagement that for human beings, and that's trauma or no trauma. But if we want to be respectful of our biology and the fact that many of us are really hanging out down in that regulatory part of the brain, which is, you know, the more primitive part of the brain, that's where, you know, I think for me personally, I'll just speak for my own personal experience, I vacillate between being like, oh yeah, this is good, I got this, I can like work and I can write proposals and I can teach other people, and then I'm a total freaking train wreck like 15 minutes later. So it's a quick vacillation between physiological states that I experience. But I think if we think about using Perry's model of engagement as a model to structure this conversation, we could start by first saying, what are the things that we are doing as educators and with our students to regulate ourselves and them? Are there particular things that we've seen that are working? And so I want you to think about somatosensory exercises, things that involve the body in some way. What have you tried? What are you doing? And then from there we can talk about, okay, what about the relational activities that we've tried? Because we really need to be respectful of the fact that one of the things that Perry talks a lot about is this concept of therapeutic dosing, which is this idea that you can't just regulate the body and expect that it just stays like that. And so in this circumstance, we are experiencing a high degree of, you know, or our kids and ourselves are experiencing so much uncertainty, unpredictability, and other things that we need to be upping the therapeutic dose of regulating. So we need to be actually thinking about engaging in regulatory practices multiple times an hour. So this isn't like, you know, you're just going to kind of, you know, weave this into one lesson plan for the week. It's got to be an embedded part of how you're trying to teach, in my opinion. That's what I'm helping people with right now. So I'd be curious what people are saying about that.
Yeah, so I will say we'll take questions and comments that are directly in response to the prompt that you have just given. But we did get a number of questions and comments before your prompt. So I think what we'll do, Lara, is I'll just go ahead and send you the chat after, and maybe you can write a blog or collaborate on a blog together. Does that sound like a good idea? That way everyone's questions and comments get answered and recognized. Thumbs up from the speakers on the call. Does that sound okay? Okay, because there's a lot of stuff here that people have questions about. Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is awesome. It's such a great, I mean, obviously this is so needed, and I have no problem doing this once a week if we want to. Like, this can be our I'm serious. We can have education nerd out Thursdays. I don't care. Like, this is amazing. I'm so excited that, and I think it came up in some of the text, like, I feel, even working at ACES Connection, right? Even working with educators doing trauma-informed work, I feel sometimes alone in my thinking, right? In how this, and even I have all these amazing colleagues that I reach out to this is very, just this experience of seeing you all here and having these conversations is very heartwarming and makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
So
yeah.
I'm gonna call on Amanda Meyer. And I just unmuted you. Could you tell us about Peaceful Corners that you set up? Are you still there? Amanda Meyer. I was just following up on a comment you dropped in. Okay, not still there? Okay. Let's do, who else do we have? Elizabeth Fisher. Let me find you. Here we go.
And just for everyone on board, you have to understand that these discussions we've been having have been like 15 to 30 people. So we're a little bit like, whoa.
Okay, Elizabeth.
So Elizabeth's trying to speak. She's there. Wave at us, Elizabeth.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
go for it.
She's amazing. We want to hear her.
Thank you, Emily. Hey, Emily. I think Amanda is back, though.
Oh, that's okay.
So yeah, I've been involved with Emily in the NMT that she's doing with Steve Bradley. And so one thing that I particularly appreciated was the patterns of stress. And so I apply that to myself now because I'm a first responder. So I work directly with families and students, and there's a lot of stress. We work with families who are undocumented. And so the whole pandemic is really hitting them really hard. And I realized after 2 weeks of the pandemic that if I did not take care of myself, I would not last too long. And so I do a lot of movements, and I do a lot of dancing, painting, and I encourage anyone who works in a field to actually really take a moment, because every time, and I'll speak for myself, I pick up the phone to reach out to a family, I don't know what I'm gonna find, what I'm gonna hear, so that's what I just wanted to share, the things that work for me. And, you know, the moments that I literally turn off my phone and go for a walk, or hug my kids a little tighter, and then, you know, come back and check in. So I see us like kind of a link. And if I'm not very strong, the link is really easy to break. So that's that.
I think, you know, kind of responding to what Emily said and also what you just spoke to, one of the things I find really interesting in any crisis, especially in education, is in education, we're so reactive, you know, and reactive to the point where we deal with what we need to deal with in its time. And as soon as we feel like it's over, we go back to what we've always done. And so as I think about all these models, like, you know, I think about the neurosequential model and NMT and all those things that we talk about, I think it's really, really good that in these times of crisis, we go back and we hone in on those skills and on those things and the scaffolding that we've learned. I think the challenge for us as educators is when we get back to that point of normalcy, do we continue to focus and hone in on those things? Or do we go back to academics? And that's what we tend to do. And
Right.
so I think it's just like we do when we talk about, when I try and go out and talk with people about what it is to traumatic students or students dealing with trauma, we're talking about all kids, not just some of our kids. We're
Right.
talking about all kids. That goes back to what Jim talked about. And so how do we make that the focal point of what we do all the time, not just in times of crisis?
Exactly.
So like I want us a year from now, I want us to still be having these conversations about regulation and about the neurosequential model and all those things that we know are what's best for kids. And I think some of that does start at the district level. And I think even in the area that I'm in, where we have 4 or 5 districts, within 20 miles of each other, even watching those different districts and their way that they approach this continuous learning and the teleteaching, whatever you want to call it, it's been vastly different. So it's about how do we come together as educators who have the best interests of all students at the forefront of every decision, and how do we continue to have that long after this pandemic is over or we go back to normal? How do we continue to have these types of conversation and truly focus on what's important and not just the academic piece, which we typically do?
But James, also one thing, and then one thing that's important, and so a lot of us on this call obviously are what we call trauma aware, trauma informed, and I don't think I'm by myself thinking that, wow, under a lot of stress and pressure, guess what? I go back down and I don't use the skills that I so easily come out with during my school year. And what we are faced with, anyways, in the positions that I'm in, reaching out to families, helping them with food, Chromebooks, whatever it is sometimes the higher ups don't allow the first responders to take a breather. The teachers need to produce. I know so many teachers who can't figure out technology. So that makes them the bad teacher now. And so there's almost like what's missing that I see from our huge school system is really the permit, like you are allowed, guys, to really take care of yourselves, and self-care when your system is not allowing you to take care of yourself, right? So I think people who are in positions of admins and superintendents and would be so nice for them to be like, hey, we're gonna allow you to reach out to those skills and those helps and those. So I hear you from what's gonna happen after the pandemic. My issue right now is even for just us right now, are we really able to tap in the skills that we should be able to tap in? That makes sense.
Awesome.
I think Amanda Myers also
Yep.
kind of get it.
I think we should go back to Amanda just because her hat
Yes.
is awesome. I love
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
Oh, yay. Sorry. I had to fix it. I had it off for some reason. I just wanted to say that this is an opportunity for some of the things that we do in school as educators. We can really share some of those things with parents to implement at home. And I think parents are more receptive right now to a lot of those things that are being done in the school. Like people are saying, oh my gosh, teachers, I'm so thankful for teachers. And how do you do this all day with all these kids? How do you maintain this? For all those working parents that, don't have that every day with their kids all day long, they're out working. So I think it's a great opportunity. So there's 7 of us in a behavior position in my district, and that means 1 in each school of one of our highest need schools. So we were sharing just the other day about how do we bring that home? How do we try our hardest to share some of the things that we're doing in school to where parents can do it at home? And one of those things was our Peace Corners and sharing what that looks like on the regulation level. And one of those things that we do in our schools is Peace Corners, and learning how to regulate what that looks like, what the body feels like. I mean, it's such a great opportunity to teach parents some of the things that we do every day at school that works profoundly in that regulation piece. Because I'm totally with you with how do we make regulation that core where we need to be at all times. That needs to be our priority. And how are we doing that in the schools to where parents can implement a lot of that at home, and parents can share some of the things that they do as well, just to be on that same page.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
I think something that, as we work on our own regulation, and this has given us a time, kind of almost opens that opportunity for us. But I'm not in a school, but when I look at my Lincoln alumni kids right now, and those that I've been able to stay connected with, wow, trying to help them with regulation when they just got laid off and they don't know how they're going to pay the rent. They're working extremely hard, doing the best that they can. Wow, that puts some incredible strength. I think that this gives us the opportunity, I believe, to pull in our community partners so that when we hear of these needs, we can bring our partners in, whether it's working with our food bank and referring families, or for me, for my Lincoln kids, where I can refer them to the food bank, let them know what's available. I had to help one the other day just in having him know that there's a check coming. He wasn't aware that a check was coming for him that would bring some relief. But that's been my stress that I've had to try to manage with my self-care, is trying to bring safety and encouragement to kids or young adults, I'll say, that are in total chaos, and they don't know what the future is. They don't know if they're going to go back to the original job. Man, that's scary. And again, one thing leads to another. I lose my job. I got a car payment. I got a rent. I got food. How do I prioritize those? I got to have food. I need the car. So also now I'm with rent. And so I think if we could bring in our community partners and our mental health professionals to just wrap as much support around these families as we can. And as Elizabeth shared, our undocumented families, my gosh, their lives have been turned upside down, and trying to bring a sense of safety to them. And it's a little overwhelming, I know, but I don't think we can do it by ourselves. I think we got to really reach out and bring collaboration around this with our community.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, James, your comment was great. Do you want to bring that to the group out loud?
Yeah, we talked about this earlier, you and I did, and I think, in trainings, when we go throughout, we go to buildings and we talk to administrators, and they say one of the things that they struggle with is getting teachers to feel that sense of empathy. Like teachers are empathetic people, I know that, but sometimes it's really hard to truly feel that situation or that perspective of a student, or a situation of somebody who's living in a different class than you, like for lack of a better way to say it. And I think one of the things that this pandemic has done is created this forced sense of empathy. It's really allowing parties, not just in education, I mean far beyond outside of education, where we're truly being forced into a situation where we have to be empathetic towards one another. And so we talk about it inside of education. We have parents who have become much more empathetic for teachers in the situations they deal with in the classroom all day long. We know that, right? But I think the flip side of that is true as well. I think as teachers, we're growing in our empathy as a teacher who has your own kids, and you're trying to take care of your 20, 25 kids in your classroom, but also take care of your 2 or 3 at home. Like, your empathy grows in what's expected of parents during this time as well. So I think another thing that we have to capitalize on this is that sense of empathy that's been created through this pandemic, and how do we carry that over back into the normal brick and mortar buildings when we get back to that point.
So any thoughts, because that keeps coming up, right? This is any suggestions, ideas? This is a brainstorm, and we're going to keep doing this. This is too good. About how we keep these things, the regulation, the empathy, the conversation about grades, whatever is really hitting us as something we want to keep, how do we keep this conversation not just at the forefront, but grow it and bring, and not just go back to business as normal? That is my greatest fear, that this opportunity will not, we won't be able to take the risk, or I don't know how to put it, but that is my fear.
Are you okay if I chime in here for a second?
Yes, Emily, of course, always.
There's something I'm thinking about. One of the things that has been really exciting to me that, I don't know if she's still on this call or not, but good friend of mine, Gretchen Shippey, you're out there somewhere, Shippey, informed me of the other day that I was really excited about is, you know, we often, those of us who have been in this sort of trauma-informed journey or trying to move this work in our schools have found that, you know, it can get quite frustrating because the people who have the most power aren't actually our building administrators, they're our school board members. And our school board members are extremely difficult to access because in our very harried lives, who has time to get in on the agenda of a school board meeting? And even if you do, because I've done it, you get like 15 minutes to explain all of this science. And so it's really, you know, it's a real challenge. So anyways, long story short, this is an untapped opportunity. I know our local school district is going to make their school board meetings on Zoom and inviting the public to participate in those, which I plan to do, much to their chagrin. So no, but seriously, this is, you know, as much as if you know me personally or professionally, you know that I'm griping because I'm really struggling with this whole having to move our lives online, because it's a challenge. But this is to me, I heard that and I was like, wow, that is an untapped opportunity for us because now we're all home. And if we know that a school board meeting is coming up, we may have an opportunity to join it and speak this stuff, because our school boards, they're ready to listen right now. I know, you know, they're wondering what should we be doing for students? How long should the school day be? What should we be requiring in terms of content? You know, and this is, to me, this is, you know, a really unique opportunity to maybe be heard and for them to be willing to listen. So like James is saying, where people are having, you know, kind of spontaneous experiences of being more empathic, I think people are also a little bit more open to hearing ideas, potentially, just because they themselves don't have any answers and they're overwhelmed by the circumstance.
Awesome. Lara, yay, great name. Go ahead, Jim, and then Lara, go ahead.
I'd like to hear Dustin as he leads his school.
Yeah.
I think it comes from the leaders. You know, when we look at how do we move forward, I think the leaders, we got to be the voice out front, and we've got to be working with our teachers and sending the message. It's okay. The social emotional piece, you know, getting our kids regulated, settled. It's okay to put time into that. And I hear that from some districts, and other districts are focused on the academics and why aren't the packets coming in? And so I think our leaders, and we have to be that voice to bring the safety. And Dustin, if you don't mind, I just have so much respect for you and what you do. How do you convey that with your staff?
Just hang on one second. I think Allison might have to unmute Dustin.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let me find him. Dustin Springer. Okay, yeah. Got it. Great.
Hi.
Hey, Laura. I really think that it comes down to continuing to be compassionate and understanding with our educators and our families. You know, I think James hit the nail on the head when it really is kind of a forced, you know, we're being forced to be more empathic. And, you know, I've preached from day one working with our staff that, you know, of course the academics are important to us, and, you know, that's why we're here. But at the end of the day, none of it means anything if we aren't, you know, relating to not only our students, but our families and the community, and having our families feel that connection, nothing else is going to matter unless that connection is there. And if we aren't intentional in those conversations as leaders with our staff, we will go back to the way it was before. I mean, look, I get it. It sucks. I hate being at home. I'm missing the connection with the kids. This is incredible to me. I'm like, it breathes so much life into me to see so many people here that share this same way of thinking. But at the end of the day, I want to be back at school. I want to be connecting with our families. I want to be connecting with our staffs, and ensuring that we don't go back to the way it was before. But we're not going to get there if we don't continue to have these conversations in our communities. So I think, again, it goes back to just being very intentional with those conversations and remaining focused on the relational piece of everything.
That's so great. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Allison.
Yeah, Ingrid, we want to hear.
Go to Ingrid? Okay. And then back to you.
Ingrid, can you unmute yourself, or do I need to do it? Let me see.
Ingrid's another ACES Connection staff member from the Southeast. Midwest. Sorry, Midwest. Tennessee. You know, I'm like, Tennessee, where is it?
Yeah. I live in the Southeast, but I cover the Midwest. I had something anecdotal to include. I just did a Zoom where we were really focused on families and parents during this time in Tennessee, and I had a good turnout. It was about 90 people, and they really over and over again, they kept saying how they were building relationships with their teachers. They were said it over and over, and especially here in Nashville, we've had some contention around public schools here just lately, and so they really said, I'm grateful for my teachers, my kids' teachers, that they're, you know, communicative. I have such access now, and they really wanted to make sure that kept going. And so I think that's really one of the positives right now, is that people are very accessible because of this virtual, you know, we're texting, we're emailing, we're more communicative, we're more responsive during this time, and parents are really seeing it, and they're valuing it, and they want it to continue.
That's so great. I love to hear that.
So we just have, you know, really just like maybe like 7 minutes before we really start to wrap up. I know. So, I'm actually just pulling up the calendar now. Maybe we want to could we just say, like, let's pick another day so we can continue this conversation? I mean, and then we'll take a few more questions.
Yes.
Like maybe we could do next Tuesday, or we could do the following Tuesday or the following Thursday.
Let's meet next week.
You want to do next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So just so everyone knows, because this is such a rich conversation with so many of you participating, we're gonna do part 2 on Tuesday. It'll be a different registration link, and that's to prevent spammers, because we did have a spammer last week, and that was a little bit traumatizing. So we're gonna have a separate registration link. So we release that stuff on Mondays. So you just go to our website on Monday, scroll down to the widget section where it says, you know, upcoming webinars, and then the registration link will be there as of Monday, just so you all know. Yeah, Lara?
And I'll do my best to make it, I know Tuesday is a shift from Thursday this week, but I'll do my best to like set these as the same day going forward. I'll work with Allison and Jane, who schedule these, and try to come up with like just our weekly education.
We could do Thursdays. I kind of had Ingrid down for Thursday on health equity. Ingrid, do you want to do Tuesday instead? Let me unmute her. Are you still around?
Yep, she's there. She just muted.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I'm flexible. Just let me know. And
okay.
Because I'm also very interested in keeping in touch with this group, just from my past trauma-informed educator work. So I definitely want to keep in touch. And so Tuesday is fine with me.
So if
And
we
three.
want to do health equity on Tuesday, Ingrid, then we could make education a regular Thursday event.
Sounds good.
Okay. Woohoo!
Awesome. Wow, working together.
You're watching the ship get built as it sails.
It's funny because that is like I have one last point that goes with what just happened right here. And I think one of the things that I've seen and the reason this has been so successful, not just chat, but just what I see happening in education is vulnerability. That's the one thing that I've seen like really add to the success, because as leaders and as teachers, one thing that we tend to do is we don't take a risk unless we know when this happens, this will happen. When this happens, this will happen. When this happens, this will happen. But in the midst of all this, we don't know what's going to happen next. We're going and we're building the ship as we're going. We're building the plane as it's flying. And I think that's really allowed us to be more vulnerable to one another. And that's the part of the success that I see. We have to get to a point as leaders and as teachers where I may not know A to Z what's going to happen and what that path looks like, but I have to be willing to know this is what's best for kids. I'm going to figure it out as we go. I think that's
This
powerful.
is so great. And we're going to come up, like, I had no idea this was going to happen. Like I said, these conversations have been like 15 to 30 people. So I am just so happy. And we'll come up with a way for you guys to like submit questions for us to think about this. I mean, I got this started the first time and we brainstormed last week, but I really want this to be a group process where we're all contributing questions and ideas and thoughts that we want to mull around together and inviting people.
Can folks email you questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stick that in the chat here. I'm putting
Thank you.
in there.
Yeah. And even if like, I want to say too, that I feel as though this format of being able to see that there are this many people, that we know that we filled the Zoom spaces because there are this many people who are desperate to not feel alone, that even if, the conversations, the material of the conversation, the content of the conversation maybe isn't that we've come up with, a new rocket design, but it's just that we get to see one another, know that we're not alone, know that we're struggling through this together, that there is a desire to use this as an opportunity to build upon the momentum that was already going for our movement.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time where I felt like in this work where I've actually got to really see people just, not at a conference or something, but in a more informal way that feels like, yeah, baby, this is good. We are something together here, people. Like, this is great. Like, we need to see that right now. We need to know we're not alone. And I think it's good for us to keep showing up for one another just for that alone. So thank you, Lara, for coming up with this, and ACES Connection for being willing to do this, and to, like James just said, willing to, kind of do it on the fly and figure it out as we go.
So
yes.
Amazing. So Lara, how do you want to spend the last, 5 minutes or so?
Oh, wow. That's a lot of pressure. Just like a big virtual hug. That's what I really want. But I think I just want to encourage people to keep thinking about these questions. I will work with Emily and Jim and James, and we'll put together some kind of, like, people have been asking like a summary of the chats in our conversation. I've been taking notes this whole time. So we'll figure out a way to kind of digest what did happen, and then think about what else we need to go forward. And then I would like to just say thank you so much, and I would love to open it up to my 3 co-speakers and let them carry on.
I think the last thing I'll say is I think this conversation needs to continue, and I think I'm a really big proponent of PLNs and that professional learning network. So I just dropped my Twitter handle in the comments here. If other people want to add their Twitter handles there, I think that would be an amazing thing to be able to connect with people that way as well. I'm looking forward to the chat next week, but I think that's another good thing that we can do to continue this conversation. Not always on Zoom, but wherever we're at.
I love it.
And just Jim, do you have any closing comments?
I really like that idea, James. I think it allows us to keep that conversation going, and then it allows us to hear your feedback, because I think a lot of the answers are sitting in front of us. So
yes,
it would be great to hear the input from those that are here participating today. I look forward to learning from you guys and share, and we'll we're all on the same team and we'll be out sharing.
I love that. Emma, got anything to add? No, you're good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
So let me just do some logistical wrap up stuff. I just want to say thank you to everyone. You are ACES Connection, like you are our community, and showing up today is just showing us what a strong community that we have. For those of you who aren't members of ACES Connection yet, maybe you heard about this from Emily or James or Jim or Lara and are not on there. We invite you to join as a member. So you can just go to acesconnection.com and click join. And these conversations can continue on our website. Lara, can you tell them about which community they can join to continue this conversation?
Yeah, the ACES in Education page. I have almost 2,000 members currently, so please join if you're not a member of ACES in Education. There's a Ask the Community section. There's ways to communicate that way as well. And there's resources. I post articles 3 or 4 a day, usually around these kind of topics that are just, for your enjoyment. So yeah.
I'm gonna post a link to that community. My computer is running a little bit slow. Oh, it's not popping up. It's not gonna happen. Okay. So the way that you find communities on our website is that you go to our homepage, and on the upper left-hand corner, you click communities. So you can search for ACES in Education, and that's the wonderful, amazing, and inspiring community that Lara leads. And we can continue a lot of these conversations there. A lot of you don't know that you can post content to our website. We co-create the community. So if you join and you're logged in as a member, you can actually click the post button in the upper right-hand corner from our main home website to post original content to our main site. If you want to post content just within the ACES in Education community, you would join that community and then click the post button from within that community. And you can post blogs that you've written, blogs that other people have written. You can ask the community. There's all sorts of different types of content that you can post. So I just want to extend that invitation to everyone. We hope to see you on over there. We will see you right back here on Zoom on Thursday. Also, I invite you to join. Ingrid will be hosting on Tuesday a conversation about health equity. And
it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, she's amazing, as I'm sure you could see. And then on next Friday we have Carrie with Elaine Miller-Carrs, who's brilliant. So lots of great discussions lined up for next week. We will release that registration link on Monday. So you just go onto our website. It's a little widget box on the right-hand side that says register for the upcoming webinar. So you can register starting on Monday. And we can't wait to see you all back. Thank you so much. Education Thursdays, woohoo! All right. It's gonna be a thing, people. It's a thing. It's now a thing. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.